Okay, so let me tell you a little story. About 5 years ago, my department chief called me into his office and he delivered some news to me. I needed to go back to working nights and holidays, or I had to leave the position I'd held since finishing fellowship. There was no conversation, no negotiation on this. It was just an ultimatum. Now, I've been in this role for about 10 years. I had seniority. I built so many relationships there. I'd worked hard to build a schedule that worked for myself, my family, and in one meeting, all of that had changed. For most physicians in that situation, really there's only one move. You accept it. Walking away means no income, no plan, no fallback. What did I do? I ended up walking away. I had been building income outside that job through real estate, through passive investments, and that income was significant enough that it gave me real choices. So what do we do? Well, we moved our family to an area that I always wanted to move to that I thought would fit better for what we wanted for our kids. And for about 6 months or so, I didn't practice clinically at all, but it gave me a chance to take my kids to school every morning. I helped with their homework, I went to all their games, and I had a chance to breathe. And all of this was only possible because I built alternatives before I needed them. If something about this story resonates with you some way, even if it makes you uncomfortable, I want you to stay with me and stay tuned. Welcome to the Passive Income MD podcast, where we talk about creating your ideal life through multiple streams of income. If you enjoy hearing about this stuff, make sure to hit subscribe. Now let's get on with the show. All right, everyone. Hope you had another great week. Thanks for coming back to the Passive Income MD podcast. Again, my name is Peter Kim. Today, we're going to be talking about the employed physician trap and why in 2026, it's getting worse. Now, let me give you a little history because I think context matters here. For most of the last century, owning your practice wasn't just like an ambitious goal. It was the default. You finished training, you started a practice, and you ran it like a business. And that's what doctors did. I mean, in the early 80s, roughly 76% of physicians had an ownership stake in their practice, and that was a norm. Then things started to shift over time, as you know, EHR mandates, complex regulations, declining reimbursements, and the math and the practicality on running a small independent practice just got harder every year. Medicare reimbursements lost nearly a third of their real value over 25 years. So employment started looking a lot more attractive. It looked like the answer to most people. Like you can let somebody else handle the billing, handle the overhead. You can get a nice salary, get benefits, get paid time off, get that stability. And so by 2012, 60% of physicians were still in private practice. 12 years later, that number had dropped to 42%. And the most recent data from January of this year, I'm talking about 2026, shows that 82% of practicing physicians are now employed by hospitals or corporate entities. I'm talking 82%. That's 4 out of 5 physicians. They all now have that same kind of situation structurally. They're employed with a salary and a contract they sign that honestly, they may not have fully understood at the time. Now, I don't say that as criticism. The math makes sense. So I know why people went this way. But here's what that contract is actually costing you. Now, I want to walk through 3 things: autonomy, satisfaction, and money. Now, let's start with autonomy real quick. A recent survey of over 3,500 physicians found that 67% of those in independent private practice reported having significant clinical autonomy. Now, in hospital employed physicians, that number drops to 38%. About 61% of employed physicians say that they have moderate or no autonomy to even make referrals outside of their own ownership system, whatever that is. So they don't even get to decide who they send their patients to. But here's a number that I keep coming back to. About 47% of employed physicians say they adjust patient treatment options based on their employer's policies, their cost policies or incentives. Nearly half of physicians. So they have to make clinical decisions or modify their decisions based on what their employer wants. Now, I don't think that most of us went through all that training for that conversation in the exam room or the clinical room to be influenced by what someone in admin decided last quarter. And so let's talk about burnout and satisfaction. I think we all have talked so much about burnout. I mean, honestly, I think that the attention on it has actually improved things slightly at the system level. So that's worth like acknowledging that things are getting better in that way, but the improvement isn't evenly distributed. Physicians employed in hospital and practices are nearly 3 times more likely to report dissatisfaction than peers in physician-owned settings. And here's what's driving it. 62% say that it's bureaucratic tasks. That's the primary cause of burnout. 40%, they cite lack of respect from admin and coworkers. So it's not just the hours, it's the feeling that you're not running anything yourself. You're not actually practicing the way you want to practice. That someone else is setting the terms in that space that you trained so long for. You spent a decade. In fact, you invested a decade becoming the expert in your area. Now, it's all about finances. The salary, I know it feels safe. It's predictable. Shows up every 2 weeks, maybe in your bank account. But here's what it doesn't give you. Private practice physicians earn roughly 10% or at least 10% more on average than their employed counterparts. Now, over a 30-year career, that compounds to at least $1 million more in lifetime earnings. But honestly, the bigger number isn't that income gap, it's the equity gap. Like every year you practice, you're generating real value, patient relationships, referral networks, your reputation, your clinical volume. In the employee model, all of that value flows to your employer. You own none of it. And then there's the non-compete problem. The FTC has tried to ban non-competes as recently as 2024, but that rule was blocked in federal courts, just so you know. So non-compete clauses these days are becoming even more aggressive, especially in these 2026 contracts. It's not getting less. So you can spend a decade building a patient base in a community. And if you decide to move on, your contract may say you can't practice within 25 miles for 2 years. Even though you built all of that, you can't take it with you. So here's what I want you to understand about all this. This isn't about whether being an employed physician or employment is good or bad. I mean, plenty of employed physicians really are happy where they're at and they built a genuinely good life. Maybe you're one of them. And so the trap that I want to talk about, it's not necessarily the job, it's the dependency. Joining a mastermind group was a pivotal moment in my life. Within the first year, my income tripled, and by year 4, it had increased 20-fold. But the benefits went far beyond financial gains. I found myself surrounded by a network of like-minded individuals, forming connections that would become lifelong friendships. And the collective wisdom and support from this community played a crucial role in my success and personal development. From these amazing experiences, I felt a strong desire to create a similar community for my colleagues and peers, and that's you. That's why I launched Momentum MD Mastermind. People have been asking what this is. Momentum MD, or MMD for short, is designed to offer the same transformational powers in both personal and professional growth that I've experienced. It's not just about increasing your income. It's about creating this amazing environment where you can thrive, learn, and grow alongside other ambitious and supportive like-minded individuals. MMD provides a space where members can share their challenges, celebrate their victories, and push each other and keep each other accountable to reach new heights. It's about building a network of professionals who are committed to helping each other succeed. We focus on actionable strategies, accountability, and fostering an environment of continuous improvement. So whether you're looking to advance in your career, start a new venture, or simply find more balance and fulfillment in your life, MMD is here to support you every step of the way. Now, if this resonates with you in some way and you're interested in learning more, we'd love to hear from you. To learn more about the Momentum MD Mastermind and to pre-apply for a call with us, please visit MomentumMD.com. Let's see how we can help elevate your life to the next level. There are limited spots, so don't wait. Take the first step towards your transformation today. You won't regret it. When employment was sold to physicians, it was sold as a way to reduce your risk. And in some ways it was. I mean, again, someone else can handle the overhead, the compliance, the HR, but I'll be honest, the risk didn't disappear. It just changed shape. Like what you have now is you have one income source, no ownership stake, and a contract that limits your exit. You have an employer whose incentives may not fully align with yours. And there was a recent survey by Bain & Company that found that nearly 25 physicians, so a quarter of you out there that are in health system-led organizations, you're thinking about changing employers. And in physician-led practices, maybe only 10 or 15% are thinking about changes. So what that's saying is that a quarter of employed physicians, they're just quietly looking for the exit. So the question isn't whether they want out. The question is whether they built anything they can move towards. But most haven't, because building alternatives, it takes time. It takes a lot of planning. And to be honest with you, most of us have been so busy just practicing medicine and trying to live good lives. And unfortunately, that's the trap. So before I get into this a little bit more, I just want to say something. Like, this is not about leaving medicine. In fact, that's not what I've been talking about. I mean, I practiced for years while building everything that, I'm about to describe or talk about here. And most of the physicians in our community who've created real financial options, they still practice. They just practice differently because now it's a choice. So here's the big move to make. Number one, build income outside your employer. I've talked about this a ton. You want to start now. You want to diversify your income sources before you need it. That could be through real estate, through private investments, through a side business, consulting. What the vehicle that you choose actually matters less than this whole concept or idea of building streams of income outside of medicine. Every dollar that you build outside of your employer increases your leverage inside your employee situation. You can negotiate differently when you can actually walk away. We all know that. When you can walk away, that's when you can really set the best terms for yourself. You can tolerate less when staying is a choice, not a necessity. And that shift from being financially dependent to financially free or financially optional, it changes everything about how you show up, how you're treated, what you're willing to accept, and honestly, how you treat patients. Another move to think about that so many people in our community are thinking about doing is to understand the alternative practice models. We talked a lot about this in our community. I think that most physicians were never shown these different practice models in training. You don't know much about it. Like direct primary care, maybe it's membership based without dealing with insurance. The physician controls their panel size, their hours, their relationships with their patients. About 9% of family medicine now is happening this way, and it's growing. There's concierge medicine, there's cash pay practices, and both remove the insurance layer altogether. A lot of people are turning to telemedicine as a flexible income layer. Again, that doesn't have to be your whole practice, but maybe a few hours a week on your terms. And of course, there's locums, which I think is underused as a transition tool. The locum market has grown 25% since 2020 alone. I think COVID had something to do with that. People don't want to be locked in. They want to have different options. And a lot of that growth is really physicians who want to schedule control without fully walking away. You put so much time into this that you don't want to just walk away from being a doctor. You just want to control how you do it. Now, none of these are right for everyone, but most physicians I talk to just have never seriously looked at them because they assume that being an employed physician, that was the only real path. But I want to let you know it's not. Now, I started this episode talking about the story where my department chief, that he gave me an ultimatum, no warning, no conversation. In fact, I didn't even know my last shift was my last shift. And that was hard for me to take at the time. But I realized that it was going to be okay. I just had a choice to make the following month. But most physicians in that moment, they just have no real options. Like you just have to accept it because everything depends on that job, your life, how you take care of your family. Again, I was fortunate that I had a choice, not because, I'm like Nostradamus or I have these incredible predictive powers. I did see it coming though, because people had told me. I had friends, I had community that I was connected to who were telling me that things were changing and things were coming. And so for several years before that whole conversation came, I'd been building quietly. Again, not as an exit plan that I thought I'd have to actually, trigger, just a way of making sure that someone else's decision about my schedule couldn't determine my family's future. And when that moment came, even though it was hard at that time, I walked away. I had months without clinical work. I went back because I wanted to practice, but it allowed me to be present in a way that I hadn't been in years with my family. And again, that's not a story about quitting medicine. It's a story about what's possible when you have options and what isn't possible when you don't. I find that the physicians who have choices when things change are the ones who built them before things changed. Every year at our conference, PIMD Con, I have people raise their hand. Who thinks that medicine is going to be in a better place in 5 years? And I will say, maybe one hand goes up. I tell people, how many people think it's the same? A few more hands go up. And how many people think it's going to be worse? And I will say the majority of the room raises their hand, saying that they're going to be in a tougher position as a physician in terms of autonomy, control in years ahead. So I want to ask you that same question. Where's medicine going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, or even 10 years down the road? Do you think you're going to be in a better position if things change to make decisions that are best for you and your family? And if not, this is the time to get started. Before things change, before you need to make that happen, this is where you want to get in communities, get in rooms where people are talking about this. Find alternative strategies, build other sources of income. Don't be surprised when this happens so that you can continue to practice medicine how you want. That's my goal for this community. I'd love to see you in these rooms, whether it's at PIMD Con this year in Dallas, whether it's one of our membership communities, whatever we can do to support you. Want to let you know we have something for you. Thanks for listening today. Hope you have another amazing week, and we'll talk again soon. Bye. Enjoy the show? Let me know by dropping a review in the podcast app you're listening to us in. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit subscribe. Join thousands of physicians who are also on this journey to creating their ideal lives through multiple streams of income. Learn more at our website, passiveincomemd.com. Thanks again for allowing me to be a part of your journey. See you next time.